All right. What would be my perfect game? Well, that'd be a tough question to answer, but I'll make it even tougher. If the Rippaverse continues to rise and we can make our own dream game, no budget concerns, what kind of game would it be? We're talking about the most ambitious game. I've answered this question before on stream, but let's really go through this. If we had no budgeting concerns, I'm not trying to make the most widely accessible game. In my opinion, this approach has plagued modern gaming. Developers are trying too hard to make games for the lowest common denominator. When I say accessible, I'm not meaning the colorblind settings. I'm saying like trying to appeal to people that can play the game and catering to their experience. But accessibility does not mean good. Just because a bunch of people can play your game does not make it good. And having a specific target audience is not a bad thing, nor does it mean that you can't be very profitable. So let me first bring up the culture and approach of this dream game before we get into the genre. I'd want to make a game for people that are going to play the game. The people that are going to be invested clock a lot of hours in. It's not for people that want to play it once a week, 45 minutes, pre-gaming, sipping a little Bud Ice before they go to the bar. It'd be a game for gamers, not really casuals. It would not be easy, and I don't care about games journals or streamers wanting to hurry up and complete it just so they can move on to the next game, get their reviews in. No pay to win or pay to progress mechanics either. There will be an obvious skill gap in it, and the game simply will not be able to be played by every single person that exists, nor will it be every person's cup of tea. The game will not play itself, and we are prioritizing actual gameplay over cinematics. Our goal is to make the best game for the target audience. With that out the way, what would be the genre? Many of you know that I like action RPG, so that would be what I'd want to build. We still have not got that next generation action RPG. Cyberpunk turned out to not be that, and Starfield doesn't seem to be that either. With the obvious growth of technology and these engines, I feel as if we're overdue. The same can be said about MMOs. The genre has been very stagnant, and we've got a lot of big promises that always seem to underdeliver. You see a lot of Korean developers try, and boy, do they know how to cut a trailer. So for this dream game, I'd want to build an online action RPG. Maybe it's not like an MMO in the traditional sense, but I'd like for the base to be online with both cooperative and a touch of PvP content. Not to say that I wouldn't be willing to build an ISOM or a Yaira game. We're just talking about the dream game here. So instead of having you play as Rippaverse characters, I'd want you to be able to create your own except. So we focus on character customization and give you the tools to create. That doesn't mean that known Rippaverse characters would not be in the game. They'd appear, but they just wouldn't be playable. Maybe we start with Flores Park as that base start city and branch out from there. So you'd inevitably see Rippaverse characters, and there would be cool ways to implement them. Now I know some of you are thinking, so what, you mean DC Universe Online? Yes and no. Obviously, DC Universe Online is dated. I clocked a lot of hours in that bad boy. But my criticism of that game has been the same I've had for other MMOs. It feels like the gameplay and combat is an afterthought. It becomes like item management, the game. The combat isn't really engaging, and you can kind of sleep through it. Before we even get to build out the game, we'd start with the combat and general gameplay loop. Everything extends from how the game plays, not the other way around. We're not going to create a game and then say, oh, people got to actually play it. So here's what I'm thinking for a combat system. I like this to be a mini fighter of sorts. This would very much be a controller-driven game, but I have some ideas about input options too. We'll talk about that in a bit. Marvel's Avengers was a game that failed because it did exactly what I said not to do, or it will fail. But the one redeeming quality was its combat system and its setting. What I mean by that is that we got to see a true live response combat system with heroes varying in their powers. I imagine for our game, it would be a mix of that with maybe even a hint of Dragon Ball Xenoverse. The point is it's live response, and I don't want it to be a button masher. I want there to be combos when it comes to melee that's based on both the button combinations and the timing. When I say live response, I mean that there's going to be an obvious skill gap because of the reaction speed. So that means a very thoughtful weave and dodge mechanic. That's going to be key. With the primary gameplay, I like the characters to have two main stances, if you will. A general stance, which will allow them to freely aim and target wherever their character is facing, and then a fight stance, which not only allows the user to focus on one enemy, but it would also change the combinations and moves that are available to you. Because this would basically change that game into like a 3D fighter. This is where I'd imagine some of the PvP could exist. Balancing that would be one hell of a challenge, however. And that's where Xenoverse lacked. But my idea to address accessibility concerns would be in the gameplay and the class system. Though melee type of combat, that's going to be where most people gravitate towards, I can think of a few other options. I want as much variety as we realistically can have without much of a meta. Easier said than done, I know. But what if we had a couple of shooter classes that could act as range? Basically, for them, this could turn the game into sort of an FPS. And that can be where those mouse and keyboard enthusiasts really thrive. On the other hand, there may be someone that likes the overall concept of the game, but they aren't good on the controller and they have, let's say, poor reaction speed. What if there's a class that prioritizes the use of technology? Maybe they can hack things that impact the battlefield. Maybe it's easier for them to scout for hidden items on a given mission. Maybe they can deploy drones or give technical buffs to their allies, tactical advantages, maybe special crafting advantages or use of vehicles. It'll make them very, very useful. And I think the little stuff like this could allow for the different type of gamer. But depth of the game would be a key thing for us. This is why I wouldn't want to waste many resources into the cinematic stuff, and I'd weave the story into the actual gameplay. I want our resources to be allocated towards giving you all of the best possible gaming experience. I want there to be variation between the characters you all create. As you progress, I want there to be certain decisions that you have to make, and that's going to truly make your character unique. This requires a detailed skill tree between various classes. No two characters should be exactly alike. Now, navigation would be another thing that we'd have to address. It'd be big. I'd want some sort of open world, but maybe not one that's open just for the sake of being open. That means that traversal sort of elements have to be considered. Also, for technical reasons, the major missions maybe make more sense to be like a hub base instead of just part of the open world. And I lean towards smaller parties than massive. I for sure want raids and such, and I want that emphasis on the co-op element, but not just a million characters fighting some big enemy. Which brings me to the mission types. I think this is also where we can address different types of heroes. Are you a guy that's more stealth? Are you a guy that's like a pure brawler? Or are you more of a solo type guy? Those types of decisions will be made by you as the game player. Our job as devs will be to provide as many scenarios as possible that suit your hero. Of course, there will be base missions that are played by all types of heroes, but I do think the team element is where this game is going to thrive. Imagine a mission based on a 5-player team. But not just simply 5 players in the same place, going place to place on a level. Maybe it's a rescue mission, let's just say that. And you have maybe a technical specialist and a stealth agent. Maybe those two, as part of the same mission, are working together to take a hidden route to disable comms and break out the subject. The other 3 are moving through the main entrance, fighting various types of enemies, purposely causing a commotion. Maybe one of those 3 is a shooter that picks people from afar, while the other 2 are truly in the mix, front line. It's stuff like that that I think would make for a fun experience. And I want there to be incentives for those that work as a team. Maybe you can build your own guilds, bases, and actually those bases have function to them. Either way, once people get towards what people deem as, the end game, the game won't be easy. There will simply be certain parts of the game that some people will have a lot of trouble getting past. And there's nothing wrong with that. We wouldn't patch it to make it easier as long as it's fair. Get good. It's about engaging gameplay. It wouldn't be one of those that you can do some difficult mission, talking and giggling with your chat. You'll have to sit up in your chair. Finally, the gear and item system would have to be robust. I want there to be a difference between item management for, let's say, a technical specialist and one that's like front line. There needs to be some differentiation. I want there to be unique gear that impacts the game play, unique move sets that makes you feel like an absolute badass, but also it's so unique that maybe only your type of character can pull that off. So when you match up with randoms for a quest and you roundhouse kick someone out of his shoes, they ask you, what the hell was that and how did you do it? And then you say it's because your character was a martial artist and that you completed this mission that was specific to that class and your hero type. And at the end of it, you're trained in a portal with a Rippaverse character and it was taught to you. But only a select few can do it. It adds like different elements to rarity and uniqueness. That's what being a hero is about. Anyway, I could talk about this type of stuff all day. I don't want to get ahead of myself and rambling about my dream game. Perhaps this is just part one, and maybe if the dream becomes more of a reality, we'll have a little more in-depth discussion about my ideas. But with that being said, what do you think? Up next for the Rippaverse this fall is Alpha Core #1, written by one of the most prolific writers of all time, Chuck Dixon. Penciled by the legendary Joe Bennett. You're not going to want to miss this book. Visit Rippaverse.com to stay up to date and grab ISOM #1 to get caught up on the first appearance of Alpha Core.